Hi everybody, I'm Stacy with Stacy's Organizing and Decorating for Life. I'm here to help you organize your thoughts and decorate your perspectives. So today our topic is going to be on grief. And while you may not like grief, if you like that we're going to talk about dealing with grief today, please hit the like and subscribe button below. I'm not even going to tell you how to deal with grief because that's an individual process. It has taken me all day long just to do this video because I want to be respectful, because everybody's process is different. I just want to make clear that dealing with grief and healing with grief is not getting over your loss of your loved ones. I think that a lot of times it gets lost that, when people think that people need to start their healing process of their grief, that they're supposed to end up healed. And that's not going to happen with grief, I'm afraid. I'm sorry, Grinch is making the noise. I don't know that, but I can tell you that I'm 10 years in. So we're going to talk about dealing with grief when it's fresh and new, up to 10 years in, because I don't know that grief ends. I don't think that it does. So I just want you to understand that if you've been dealing with grief for a long time and afraid of getting into a different process, in that fear of losing that loved one, or that you're going to be releasing that loved one, or that you're going to have to let go of that loved one, because we're told that, right? So some people are told that, but what it means to one person, I've been told to release, and I don't think the person's intention was to take something from me that I love and cherish, because that's what it feels like, right? When we're told to release something, we feel like someone's taking from us something that we love and cherish, And we're not going to do that. We're just not. So that's where we're going in this video. But before we get started, I have to remind you that I'm not a doctor, psychologist, psychiatrist, or scientist of any sort, but I like to share about those things. I'm a life coach. I have a webpage called stacyforlife.com. And on this webpage, there is a description of the services that I provide as a life coach dealing with addiction, codependency, and grief. Not exclusively to those things, though, because underneath those things lies a desire for healing and healthy relationships, as well as development of spiritual and soul consciousness. Really, it's about feeling comfortable in our own skin. So if you or anyone you know need help in any of those areas, then please feel free once again to look me up at stacyforlife.com. I'm on most social media as Stacy Renee, Stacy Renee 8 on Instagram, and, Stacy Renick at Gmail. So we're going to get back into this. I posted on Tuesdays, I post Topic Tuesday, and I knew that I was going to post about grief this week because I'm 10 years into my major grief process, and it's still a process. So when I was looking for something to post, to talk about this topic, I posted a sunrise because I remember that when we grieve, when we start this grieving process, what is surreal to us is that one day somebody's here and then the next day they're not. And then it's moving forward from that day. How are we going to do that? All that loss and confusion and that, sense of no hope, hopelessness, and all of this. So how do we move forward from that place? And we don't even know, but we're still breathing. And it doesn't even seem fair. And we may not even want to, but we are. So I posted this quote along with that to express my process with grief. Where does grief and grace meet? Because it doesn't seem like we're going to get to grace when we when we wake up that next day. It doesn't seem like that it's going to be something. So it's not even it's an adventure. It's not even something anybody can tell us to have. So we hear this word grace sometimes in hymns, sometimes in other things, and we really don't get that feeling until we experience a loss that just shakes us to our bone, the core of our soul, our bones, just knocks the air right out of us. It feels that way. It feels like we just can't go on any further. So the quote that I posted says, "When I think about that sunrise that I woke up to that morning, I just feel like I got as close to nowhere as I could get, and found out that it was more of a place than anywhere I've been in a long time." And this quote was by a man named Hank Green, and I don't think he was defining grief necessarily. He was really talking about sunrises. you know. But this is a process, right? Because we go through that process, is that we cry, and then we get to this place where we go numb. And in between that process of crying and going numb is the process where we become between grief and grace. You know, it's unthinkable. Some people I know have lost people tragically. I spoke of the pandemic and everything. So some people have lost people to the pandemic, but some people lost people not even related to the pandemic, and freak accidents in this past year or two. You know, and I've made friends with these people on Facebook or on social media somewhere, you know, but I know that everywhere people deal with loss. You know, it's not something that, as personal as it feels on that day when we wake up that next day and we see that the sun still come up. How dare the sun still come up the next day, right? Is when we're feeling it's such a loss and not knowing what to do, and then we get up and we think, what now? What am I going to do? You know, and that's eventually grace can come in if we will allow it, you know, and it's hard to allow it. I understand, because we feel like if we express any kind of happiness, then maybe there's a guilt associated with feeling a little bit happy after a period of time. You know, is it going to be wrong, or should I be happy when my loved one isn't here? And those come from our old thought processes. You know, as I've shared before, and I hope that those videos will post up here, is that as I've shared before, in that last month I did a whole series in the whole month of March, is that some of the processes that we learned about grief, we learned, you know, in our own homes or in our religions and such like this. So these are old tapes that we have. Our relationship with our loved one on the other side is our relationship with our loved one on the other side. It's not a relationship with how people taught us we're supposed to be, and we have to get clear about that, or not. You know, we don't have to. But getting clear on that for me was what it was, you know, is that I had to process my relationship with that other one on the other side. So when grief was fresh and it was raw, and people would tell me about how they lost this person or how they lost that person, and I lost my son. You know, it's like, I lost my son, and I didn't just lose my son. There were 5 other children lost in the tragedy that took my son, and my daughter was injured in a car wreck, and I was unemployed. And so by all means, some people might think, what did this chick do wrong? Why does she have so much bad coming on her? The good thing was I was unemployed, and I was able to take care of my daughter from the car accident that she was in. The same tragedy, it wasn't the same tragedy even that my son lost his life in. Who does that? And if that wasn't something, I don't understand it. But, when I'm praying and I'm praying for divine order and something like this shows up, and I wasn't praying for this. I was praying for divine order. And that's when your faith gets tested. So in our grief, our faith is tested, And some people don't have a relationship at all with a higher power. Some people do. Some people develop a relationship later. Some people get mad at that higher power because how could this happen? If there's a higher power, how does this happen? And that's because we're taking it personal, What helped me when I started taking things personal is, I'm not saying, because I know we take it personal, and while I'm in that pissed off mode, one of the things that used to piss me off, and I understand, and please understand if you're grieving, to set those boundaries, is there's some codependency. A codependent person won't understand, and they may not even know they're codependent. So while their intentions may be well, they may be trying to get you to help them and discuss your grief with them to help them process their grief, because a codependent will try to heal other people to not heal themselves, but it ends up coming out sideways to where they're trying to get you to heal them. And when you're grieving, when I was grieving, I could only handle my grief. I couldn't even help my mother with her grief, and my son was her grandson. And people do grieve when they lose their grandchildren. They do grieve on different things. But I could not even help her because I had to deal with my own grief. I had to process this myself. I could not have somebody telling me how to feel, and I couldn't share with somebody when I knew they were grieving too, and everything else. So thankfully, I had people that I could grieve with. I had a life coach myself that could take me through this grief process. Because when we talk about healing. We're not talking about you're going to get healed, because I don't believe that that happens. Because, see, I don't think love ever dies. And so every anniversary, you're going to remember that person. And when I say anniversary, it could be, the anniversary of their loss. It could be the anniversary if you were married to somebody. You may remember it forever. And when these days roll around, it's very sad. That's grief. Because you're here and they're not. And that's normal. It's normal to feel sad that you're here and they're not. The thing that helped me in the grief and to not take things personally was, and I'm not a religious person, or you could say I'm very religious. See, that's what I learned about my grief, is the polarities, is that you could say I was very religious in the fact that I respect many religions. The Buddhists said there will be suffering, and grief is suffering. And that Jesus died at a young age, and Mary dealt with his loss. So if Jesus can die, and who am I to judge my grief or anybody else's grief? If Mary had to deal with Jesus's grief, then who am I to judge my grief or my person? Because we don't necessarily do anything to receive grief, but it feels that way when we're taking it personal, doesn't it? So that helped me in my process, in my humility, because humility isn't humiliated, remember? Humility is just to realize that we are just human. We're just another person like everybody else, and we are not the only one going through stuff. Sometimes our taking things personal can, if we keep on and keep on and keep on, it can become self-centered, if we're taking it personal. Because for me, I still had a daughter that I needed to take care of. You may still have families too. When you lose that loved one, you may still have other family members that love you, and the person that went to the other side probably, for me, if I went to the other side, this is my perspective, and I'm not saying that everybody's this way, but if I went to the other side, I would want my people to live a healthy life. And if my spirit still lives on in and through them, I would want them to be enjoying their life. I would want my spirit to be enjoying life if my spirit is living in and through. I hope that when my son sees me, that he's proud of the way that I handle life. Our grief is real. I too have SAD when the seasons come and go, and there's not this person, and and at the table, then I too can be sad, and we've definitely celebrated things differently since that time. The holidays are not the same. It's, getting into acceptance of that. When we get into acceptance, okay, it's never going to be the same. Maybe we're going to have to celebrate things a different way. Maybe we're going to have to observe things a different way, and so they have Dia de los Muertos. I get to celebrate his life even more, another day, So I look forward to the days that I get to celebrate. And it doesn't matter if you're in Mexico or somewhere else. I think you could still celebrate Dia de los Muertos if you want to. And that's the Day of the Dead. To be able to honor the people. See, because like I said, some of our processes of grief come from the way our families learned, and some of it come from the religion that we learned, but sometimes it doesn't mean that we can't learn a different way to grieve, because love's not going to die. We're still going to keep grieving. It's just a different process. It's coming to that grace, because I know that people, when I was in that process of that raw grief, and people praying for me, that there was something evolving and changing in me. And some of it was the other moms that reached out to me who had lost their children tragically too, unexpectedly, tragically, as I try to help other people. I don't reach out to so many people. If I'm asked to reach out to somebody, I do, because I let people process and experience their grief. I'm not codependent in that way to where I'm going to try to unload or encourage them to do that, because our relationships are cherished, and we're holding on to them with everything we got when it's raw. We're holding on to this love. We're not willing to share it with anybody, and especially people who are going to go share what we shared when we do share. So it's the most intimate feeling that we can feel, and it takes time. It may take forever for somebody to be able to do that. It's to be able to send him those prayers that lifted me. I don't think that I lifted myself up by any means. I think it was prayers, and I don't know who his people's faiths were. They could have been Baptist, they could have been Catholic, they could have been, any kind of faith. But that faith brought me that grace. Their faith helped me. Because all in all, I knew that it wasn't God who, for me, I'm saying for me, because some people may feel like God took their loved one. And in the end, my son did go with God, or whoever we perceive that to be, right? My son's in the next dimension. So, in the end, that's what happened. But I think that my son wanted to go for myself. I think that when he got the opportunity, he was right on. So when we think that grief is sad, when we think that lives are cut too short, we don't know what their relationship is. I'm glad that I got to work on my relationship with codependency before grief, because I got to know what was my business, God's business, and somebody else's business, because maybe God did take them. I don't even know, but that's not my business, because I prayed for my son, and that was what I got. And I think that that's when, we're hearing in the Bible or whatever you're looking at, there's so many polarities. People say it's contradicting, and it's because there are polarities in our processes that we have to, we have to go through the grief to get to grace. Oftentimes we wouldn't know one word without knowing the other word, and so I don't know what this video, for me, grace today, we're talking 10 years now. So I want you to know that when this first happens, to protect yourself, to hold on to that love. Don't let people try to, just be nosy and find out your business. It's okay to say, I'm sorry, I don't want to talk about that. There were people who came up to me, my stuff was all in the papers, and people would say to me, somebody said to me, what happened? And I'm like, I'm not talking about that. Because I'm not. Somebody don't talk to me for years, and then you're going to ask me what happened. That's just nosy, And maybe it was well-intended. I'll give that the benefit of the doubt. But I don't have to do that, and you don't have to do that either. If you are fresh and raw, you share when you feel comfortable and willing to share. You don't have to do anything. So don't allow people to take what is from you. This is what I'm saying, is that a life coach or somebody helping you in your grief process isn't going to try to take that. If they're good, they're not going to try to take that from you. They're going to help you process that to get into acceptance of handling where the guilt is, whether you own the guilt or don't own the guilt. And if you own the guilt, then being able to accept it, because we're all human, and then also being able to accept that those dreams and goals and visions that you had for your loved one aren't going to come to fruition. I understand it hurts. It still hurts. I still get tears when, I think about how I'm not going to get to dance with my son at his wedding, and I see other people do it. And while I'm happy for them, I'm still sad that I don't get to do that, So that's not going to change. There's going to be things like that just don't change, But I don't have to stay there. I can, feel sad for a moment and feel happy for them. I can feel this range of feelings because I've still got this life force in me that higher power, whoever I conceive it to be, has left me with. So that's where I get to the other side of grace, is in gratuity to all those people who held me up, and to gratuity to those people who still loved me when I couldn't share with them, to, my own grief, and that I certainly couldn't help them with their grief. To those people, I honor them as well as I honor that one on the other side. And I honor that one on the other side. When I talk to people and they do reach out to me, I encourage them to keep walking and talking with that other one. That's what I did. I can only share what I did. I can't tell people a right or wrong way to grieve, but I can share what I did. And I just kept walking and talking and doing those things that I thought would honor that person. I still do those things to honor that person. And, in that grace part, I've looked for signs. That's what we do, is when we get over to this grace part, is we're always looking for signs, and they never come up. It doesn't seem like when we want them to. We'll be looking for those signs, and we got to be very careful between looking for those signs and our love of our higher power, because our relationship with our higher power continues to grow. See, that's what happens a lot of times in grief, is it just stops the clock. It just does. And I'm just saying if we get to the healing and grace of the other side, there's a freedom to that. And this other side for me that I get to share and that I try to take people to when I work with people is that if you just keep walking and talking with them and letting, that experience flow through you. I'm not saying letting it go, because I don't think or know that letting go is the right words for that. But letting that experience flow through you of the walking and talking, because your relationship, whether we like it or not, has changed. But it doesn't mean that you don't have that relationship anymore. It just means it's changed. You're physical and they're not. But I think that they ask our higher power, or they ask whoever is in charge of this, the divine intelligence, whoever you think is in charge of all of this, I think that they ask for that grace for us. I mean, why wouldn't they? When we go to the other side, if we have the opportunity to ask for grace for those people who aren't experiencing the awesomeness that we are, because when we go to the other side, we're not experiencing this stuff. And I think that that's where we're all destined to end up. I think that that's what we're supposed to do here, is to love. And people go to the other side to receive that love. And that's what people search for all the time on this side, is that love. So we still have love, even though we have grief. And so in my process now at 10 years, I've been fortunate enough in my 10 years, this is what I'm doing, is I'm a life coach now, and I get to work with young men. One of the young men I get to work with, I told his mom it's such an honor to get to work with him, because maybe my son had some of these same problems that this young man has. We are all divinely connected. And so I get to work with a young man and help him learn to grow into this adulthood, because it's certainly different than it. When our kids tell us it's different than when you were kids, it really is different than when we were kids. So they have a lot that they're dealing with and working with, and it's my honor to be on this adventure with them. But it also is an extension of my own son. My son cannot be replaced. I mean, I have his picture in my room. I still look and talk to him. But I think that I wanted somebody to help my son. So if I can help other people, then I'm happy to. I'm happy if I help men or women, but helping other people is a place for me to put my love, and to put my lessons too, that maybe somebody could use them. If they can, that's great, because it's out of love, honestly. So I get to work with this young man, and also, suggesting to people, I'm not going to suggest to people to do anything I don't do. And when I suggest to people when grief is fresh and raw to walk and talk with their loved one, I'm so awed and amazed and proud of them to see them do that, because I know how hard that is. It's not as hard for me today to do that. And just a few weeks ago, as these anniversaries come up, people start, they start knowing it's coming up and kind of preparing and reflecting, And so I do that too. And so as this 10-year anniversary is coming up, I was driving, to a meeting the other day, and I'm sitting here thinking and processing, knowing that I'm going to a spirit-filled place, and the spirit always comes on me when I'm in the car, and I'm thinking, these things. And so I was thinking about him on the other side, and how he would have been 29 this year, and how, I'm not going to be experiencing some of those things, but I know that he's just fine where he is. It's okay. And as I'm thinking all of this, and I can't remember the exact thoughts, but it was along those lines, as I'm thinking all of this, I see a red Firebird like he used to drive coming up the other side of the road, just like his, and it lets me know that I'm right. I'm in the right lane, figuratively, and I'm in the right lane. He is fine on the other side. You see that? It's these little things like that you can grasp onto if you're willing to go through this process. You'll get to see them again, maybe not in skin, but there's signs there that you get to be open to. And so also, I'm going to share this one in closing, is that I get to help people all over the world, and I get to work with a young man who's in Egypt. And this young man has a different set of cultures and everything else, and I get to explain things to him, and I get to calm him just over the internet, and he tells me how much I help him and how much he wants to give me a flower when he sees me. So he went to military. He's in Egypt, so he went to military training, and he's out for a few days, for maybe a week, and then he goes back. But he had written me a letter, and while he can't send it to me from Egypt to Mexico, he sent me, he wrote me the letter, and then he took a picture of it and sent it to me. And it just touched my soul. It just touched my heart, because he let me know how much I helped him. That he thinks of me as another mother, and he hopes that I think of him as another son. And he's not trying to replace my son. Our relationship is very nurturing, And so he's always told me he wants to see me at the airport with the flower, and I hope to get to go to Egypt someday and meet him, and I hope he does get to see me at the airport with the flower, and maybe he's even going to get to travel, here and see me at the airport, but wherever, it's just putting that out there into the universe. But that touched my soul so very much that I'm still sharing that love. I still share the love. It didn't replace the love of my son. I just had a whole lot of love. And so while my love for my son goes in these walks and talks and the non-physical, I physically have a place to put my love. And I know that it works through those letters and through the smiles and through, whether it's male or female that I get to help. Because I also see people as myself, as when I was scared and afraid and alone too. So I hope that this video has been able to help someone. I hope that this video has been able to give somebody hope. And if you feel that it would, then please feel free to share it with somebody. It's not easy to go through grief at all. It's hard. And there's so many different processes. And that's just my process. There's not a wrong process to go through grief, I don't think, unless it's normal to feel like you want to die too when your loved one dies in the beginning and it's fresh and raw. But when your life force is still surging through you, and there's still people that are praying for you that you don't even know, and there's still people that look at you with love in their eyes, I hope that you're able to get up that next day and put one foot in front of the other. That's sometimes all we can do, is just get up the next day. Try to get up and put one foot in front of the other. Walk and talk with your loved one. There's healing in that. And if you can, get a life coach, someone you trust, life coach, clergy, psychologist. There's a lot of depression. Maybe you need a doctor, but take care of yourself, because you are valuable and you are loved and you are worthy. And it didn't happen because of something you did. And even if it did, you would be forgiven. But you don't have to take it on. The healing process doesn't mean losing the love for your loved one. It just means gaining love for yourself and accepting yourself. Okay? All right. I hope this video, again, like I said, has been helpful. These animals are going crazy. And I wish you much love and peace. And I look forward to connecting with you next time. Please feel free to leave your comments below. Thank you so very much. Bye.